I destroyed my relationship with my son to save his life. My son Jason was 16 when I found $400 in cash stuffed inside his pillowcase. I held it up and asked where it came from, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "None of your business." That was the moment I knew my son was in serious trouble. The warning signs had been there for a while, but I kept telling myself it was a phase. New friends I never met, phone calls he'd take in another room, an attitude that went from typical teenage moodiness to something colder. Then he started coming home at 2 in the morning smelling like smoke, and his grades dropped from B's to F's in a single semester. The school called to tell me he'd been caught fighting in the parking lot. I tried everything a father is supposed to try. I sat him down for long talks that turned into screaming matches where he'd call me names his mother would have cried hearing. I grounded him for weeks at a time, and he'd just climb out his window like the rules didn't apply to him. I took his car keys, so he started getting rides from people I'd never seen before in vehicles with tinted windows that never turned off their engines. One night I followed him and watched him get into a black SUV with no plates. I sat in my car shaking because I knew I was losing him to something I couldn't even name. I switched him to a new school across town, and within 2 weeks he'd found the same kind of crowd, like they could smell him coming. His mother had passed when he was young, so it was just me trying to figure this out alone, and every night I lay awake wondering where I'd gone wrong. I called the police once when he disappeared for 3 days. When they finally brought him home, he laughed in my face and said, "You feel like a big man now, Dad." Then one night, I found a gun hidden in the back of his closet, tucked behind old basketball trophies from when he was 12, and I knew this had moved beyond anything I could fix with conversations or consequences. These weren't kids who got into trouble and straightened out later. These were kids who didn't make it to 25, and I knew my son was heading the same way. The next week, I was doing laundry and found a burner phone in his jacket pocket. I scrolled through the messages and saw them planning something for Friday night at a house I didn't recognize. They were talking about guns and money and someone who needed to be taught a lesson. I stayed up all night staring at the ceiling, and by morning I'd made a decision that I knew would cost me my son, but I'd rather have him alive and hating me than dead and mourned. I waited until he was asleep and went through his backpack. I put something in there that would guarantee he'd be arrested, something that couldn't be explained away or bargained down. Then I called in an anonymous tip to the school resource officer and sat on the edge of my bed until the sun came up. The next morning, I drove Jason to school like it was any other day. I watched him walk through the front doors with his backpack over one shoulder, and I sat in the parking lot until I saw the police cars arrive. I didn't leave. I wanted to be there when they brought him out because I needed him to see my face and know exactly who did this to him. They walked him out in handcuffs in front of everyone while kids he'd known since middle school watched from the windows and teachers whispered to each other on the sidewalk. When his eyes found mine through the crowd, I watched his expression shift from confusion to understanding to hatred. At the police station, they let me see him before they processed him. He was sitting in a plastic chair looking hollow, staring at the wall like he didn't recognize it or anything else. He looked up at me and said, "I know it was you. Nobody else would have known what to plant or where to find my bag." I didn't say anything. Then he asked, "How could you do this to me? Your own son, your own blood." I just stood there and took it because there was nothing I could say that would make it better. Then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "You're dead to me. When I get out, I don't have a father anymore. You understand? You don't exist." The officer came in and told me they were transferring Jason to a juvenile diversion program out of state, that he'd be gone for at least a year, maybe more. Jason wouldn't look at me when they took him to the holding area, and I stood there watching my son disappear through a set of heavy doors. I was still in the police station lobby when the television cut to breaking news about a shooting across town. 2 young men dead at a house party, a third in critical condition. I recognized the house from the burner phone messages. I grabbed a passing officer and asked, "Has my son seen this? Did he know those boys?" The officer looked at me for a long moment and then said, "He hasn't stopped crying since it came on."